Good afternoon. We begin today with yet another major development in the trade war between Canada and the United States.
Donald Trump announced this morning he will double planned tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. The U.S. president posted a message on Truth Social that reads in part, based on Ontario, Canada placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the United States, I've instructed my Secretary of Commerce to add an additional 25% tariff to 50% on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States from Canada, one of the highest tariffing nations anywhere in the world. This will go into effect tomorrow morning, March 12th. I will shortly be declaring a national emergency on electricity within the threatened area. This will allow us to quickly do what has to be done to alleviate this abusive threat from Canada. Ontario's Premier was on MSNBC this morning.
What would it take for you to remove that surcharge on the electricity coming into the U.S. from Canada?
Well, doubling the tariff on aluminum, the U.S. only can manufacture 16% aluminum that they need. The balance, for the most part, comes from Quebec, over 65%. It's going to hurt your manufacturing. You need the aluminum. You need our high-grade nickel. And I want to send more high-grade nickel. You need our electricity. You need the 4.3 million barrels of oil that gets shipped down. I want to make sure we build an AMCAN fortress, the two greatest countries in the world. Fighting like this does not make sense. But I will respond appropriately on the electricity. Stay tuned.
Ontario is so far charging 25% more for electricity shipped to 1.5 million customers across Minnesota, New York, and Michigan. And Doug Ford has said he will not hesitate to cut off power supplies to the United States if need be. He also insists he will not back down until all of Trump's tariffs are removed for good. We spoke to the Premier this morning as he arrived at Queen's Park.
The stock markets are tumbling. It's affecting Americans, and it will affect Canadians as well. People are going to be losing their jobs in the U.S., and he has to stop the tariffs because we will be relentless, Ontario, and we will not stop until he drops the tariffs.
North American markets are once again reacting negatively today. The S&P 500 fell 0.9% this morning after word of the increase in steel and aluminum tariffs. The Dow Jones dropped more than 500 points, and the NASDAQ composite fell 0.5%. The S&P TSX composite also slid. Meanwhile, Trump also said today Canada must immediately drop its farmer tariff of 250% to 390% on various U.S. dairy products. He also threatened to substantially increase duties on cars coming into the U.S. on April 2nd if other Canadian tariffs are not removed. We'll have more reaction and analysis to these latest developments later in the newscast.
But first, we turn now to a breaking and developing story in Brampton.
A woman has died after she was stabbed inside an apartment building. CTV's John Musselman is live at the scene near Kennedy and Steeles. John.
Hi, Nathan. Yes, this is an active investigation. Peel police are on the scene. They've also set up a command center. We'll show you some video here. Police were called to this building near Kennedy and Steeles around 8:40 this morning. The reports are they entered a 12th floor unit and found a woman critically injured. She was rushed to a trauma center, but she did not survive. Now, a man inside that unit has been taken into custody. We are also told that there was a child possibly inside the unit as well when this happened. We don't have a lot of information on the relationship between the victim and the person who is now in custody. Police are just starting their investigation here at the building. The command center is at the back. They're starting to canvass some of the neighbors to get some information here. We'll try to find out more about this situation, but for now, all we know, a woman who lived in this building on the 12th floor is dead and a man is in custody. I'll report it live. I'll send it back to you.
Okay, thank you, John. Also in Brampton, a house has been destroyed by fire.
The intense blaze broke out early this morning. Video shared by a neighbor shows massive flames engulfing the home on Wainwright Drive near McLaughlin Road and Mayfield Road around 3:30 this morning. Peel paramedics say no injuries have been reported.
And security camera footage from a neighboring home shows the moment there was an explosion at the house that caught fire. Neighbors say that it appeared that no one had been living in the home.
There was a big blast, it was shaken. That's it. Then my son came, he said, no, there is a fire there. That's it.
So you were sleeping when this blast happened?
Yeah, around 3:15, yes. There was a big blast. We were shaken, the bed almost shook.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And then did you come outside to have a look?
No, my son came, he said, there's a fire. Then he called 911.
There is no word yet on what caused the explosion and if the blast is what started the fire or the other way around. Officials with the Office of the Fire Marshal have been called in to investigate.
There's a tragic update in a fire that ripped through downtown Bowmanville last night. Officials say a body has been recovered. The blaze broke out Thursday around midnight on King Street and involved multiple buildings with businesses on the ground floor and apartments above. Crews arrived to find flames and smoke coming out of the roof. The Ontario Fire Marshal says it has recovered the body of a person inside a building where the fire occurred. Investigators are working to determine their identity.
In Etobicoke, crews responded to a fire at a scrap yard last night. Police and fire crews were called to the scene shortly after 7:40 p.m. in the area of Rexdale Boulevard and Highway 27. No one was injured in the blaze. The cause of the fire is not yet known.
And a major backup on the King Street streetcar line downtown is now cleared. Service resumed between York and the Distillery Loop late this morning. The TTC says loose overhead hydro wires were the problem. The 503 cars, as well as the 504A and 504B, were affected.
Still to come this noon hour, marking a sad and somber day on the calendar. It has been exactly 5 years since COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. How the day is being remembered, coming up.
We have more news in a moment, but first here's a live look at the city this afternoon. Another bright sunny day. We're also in the double digits. A great time to be outside enjoying the spring-like conditions, especially if you're on March break. But a change is coming. Lindsay Morrison is out enjoying the outdoors, and she joins us live from Courtright Center for Conservation with a look at the current conditions. Lindsay.
Well, Nathan, I have another great assignment today, or should I say a sweet assignment. We are learning all about maple syrup. Of course, it is the Maple Syrup Festival here at the Courtright Center. This is a demonstration of what early European settlers would be doing to make maple syrup here locally. And there are all kinds of families out here enjoying the sights and the smells. Hey, you guys having fun? Everyone say hi. I think they're having a good March break. Look at this maple syrup lollipop. That looks pretty tasty. And the weather today, absolutely stellar, if I do say so myself. Let's take a look at our current conditions. Temperature-wise, we are already in the double digits. We've already reached our forecast daytime high of 12. And as you can see, it's already 14 degrees in Niagara Falls. Now, the winds today are a little bit of part of the weather story. They're coming out of the west right now, not overly strong, but a little bit later on today, we're going to be tapping into more of a northwesterly wind, and that is going to contribute to our cool down. All is pretty quiet right now on the satellite and radar, although you might be able to make out that cold front that's coming, bringing a little bit of rain to parts of Muskoka and a little bit of light snow to the Owen Sound area. Here's today at a glance. Maybe you too are hoping to come out and enjoy some maple syrup making, the Maple Syrup Festival here at the Courtright Center. We're going to be checking it out a little bit later throughout the hour, but let me show you this sap bucket. I'm happy to show you, Natalie and Nathan, that the sap is flowing, even with all this warm weather that we've been enjoying. Yeah, here it comes. Stay with us. We have a full look at your weather forecast ahead here a little later on the program, but for now, I'll send it back inside to you.
Just amazing how that works. Thanks, Lindsay. We turn to the anniversary of a day many of us will likely never forget.
It has been 5 years since the COVID-19 outbreak.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
March 11th, 2020. That was the day the spread of COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organization. Half a decade ago, and so much has changed since that day. It led to lockdowns, a massive vaccine rollout, and countless lives lost. CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan joins us live with the details on how this day is being remembered. Pauline.
Well, hi, Natalie. I'm here at Orchard Villa Retirement Community in Pickering, and there are still some signs just outside the building, reminders of what this long-term care center went through during the pandemic. Signs saying thank you to dedicated healthcare workers. Now, long-term care centers were especially hit hard by COVID-19, and in total across Canada, more than 60,000 deaths were reported as of last September when official websites were last updated. Acting Medical Officer of Health for Toronto, Dr. Nakoshi Lamte, reflects on the lessons learned, especially in long-term care.
there are vivid images of some of the outbreaks that occurred early on in COVID in terms of some of the devastating effects it had in those settings, not only in terms of lives lost, but also the disruptions in the routines that are so important for the well-being of older adults. I know that the response was also very challenging for workers who were dealing with, uncertain conditions, caring for their clients. And so there is a legacy in terms of what we can take away from that response to help protect the well-being of older adults.
The biggie for me was the spring of 2021. And this is where the healthcare system was in dire straits. This was when we were really running out of intensive care unit capacity across the province. And, it was just, you saw everyone come together as a healthcare system, as a healthcare team, and really cooperate.
And as we mark the 5th anniversary of the pandemic, the advice remains: be vigilant. I'm Pauline Shannon-Pickering. Let's go back to Nathan and Natalie.
Thank you, Pauline. We want to return to our top story. News that U.S. President Donald Trump is doubling tomorrow's tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum to 50%. CTV's Scott Hurst is following this story, and Scott, Trump is responding to counter-tariff measures from Canada. How is this now affecting the trade war?
Nathan, this is a significant escalation in the trade war as we're seeing the U.S. president respond to the latest volley from Ontario Premier Doug Ford in this ongoing trade war as it continues to intensify. And as you said, the U.S. president not just doubling down, but doubling the threat of tariffs on steel and aluminum, already expected for 25% tariffs to be imposed tomorrow on those products. The U.S. president now saying he's instructing his Commerce Secretary to bump those tariffs up to 50%, as this is in response to the latest retaliation from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, slapping a 25% surcharge on all electricity exports to the United States. Now, we've come to expect from the U.S. president that trade policy and U.S. policy could change at a moment's notice and can change with a single social media post, as we're seeing this morning several posts from the U.S. president reacting to the latest retaliation from Canada, from the province of Ontario. We got reaction soon after that from those in the steel and aluminum industry on the impact of now 50% tariffs, and what could that mean for the industry? Here's what they had to say.
It's petty, obviously. We're being played with by somebody who's driven by retribution, and at a time when, I just came from Washington, D.C. last week. A lot of people in Washington, Americans, not understanding why Canada is being targeted like this. And this is just further proof. There's nothing rational about this. It's about something else.
So, Nathan, a lot of uncertainty as this industry now prepares for upwards of 50% tariffs to be imposed on products as early as tomorrow. And, of course, these are not tied to the 25% sweeping tariffs, where Canada and Mexico did get that 1-month reprieve. As we've heard from the Trump administration, these tariffs could ultimately be stacked on top of each other. So it could pose a whole lot of economic pain on these industries and many more across Canada and the United States, Nathan.
Well, with that, we saw the markets plunge yesterday. How are they doing so far today, Scott?
Nathan, on reaction to the news of Trump threatening even more tariffs, the markets are still in the red once again today. The Dow Jones, again, down several hundred points after that significant sell-off yesterday, where the Dow Jones lost nearly 900 points. And so the markets are reacting to all the uncertainty, as we did hear from the U.S. president over the weekend, that he's not ruling out a potential recession in the United States. When it comes to the impact on the economy of these tariffs, Trump said there could be a transition period, saying it could take a little time. And of course, markets not a huge fan of uncertainty, so we're seeing them react negatively so far to the threat of tariffs on Canada and other nations, Nathan.
All right, CTV's Scott Hurst with the very latest on the trade war. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
And the trade war with the U.S. is the first challenge for the new Liberal leader. It is unclear when Mark Carney will be sworn in as Prime Minister, but he is promising a seamless and quick transition.
There is tremendous energy in the Liberal caucus. This is a united party with full of energy to serve Canadians.
Carney had a lengthy meeting with Justin Trudeau on his first full day as Prime Minister designate. He's named former Liberal MP Marco Mendicino as his chief of staff. Carney won the leadership Sunday night with nearly 86% of the vote.
High-stakes talks between senior officials from Ukraine and the United States have opened in Saudi Arabia. They're looking for ways to end Russia's war on Ukraine, which has dragged on for more than 3 years.
No more than Ukrainians want a peace, and Ukraine ready to go for this goal.
The top aide to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says American security guarantees are very important, but for now is necessary to discuss how to start the process for peace. America's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, is also involved in the talks. Back here at home, the big melt is underway along the Toronto harbor.
It is revealing a winter's worth of garbage from Lake Ontario. CTV's Scott Lightfoot has more on the team tasked with trapping all that trash.
On a sunny, spring-like day, people flock to Toronto's waterfront. But as the ice slowly recedes, a winter's worth of garbage reveals itself.
A lot of the litter that escapes into our harbor and into our Don River stays in our harbor.
For the 5th straight year, a trash collection strategy will again be deployed in the waters along the waterfront, including trash traps, essentially floating garbage receptacles.
They sit on the surface of the water and they move up and down. The water is then filtered through this mesh fabric, and it's such that it can actually capture items that are as small as 2 millimeters.
As well as 2 waste sharks, aquatic drones that scoop trash from the water. Last year, these tools helped to remove more than 640 kilograms of garbage from the lake.
And the goal is really to use these trash trapping devices to see what we could pull from the lake and what we could learn from the debris that we were collecting.
What researchers have learned is just how much trash is in the water. Things like cigarette butts, plastic bottles, food wrappers, straws, even construction materials. Researchers have also learned that those who use the waterfront aren't the ones directly responsible for most of the garbage.
I think a lot of the litter that enters in the Toronto harborfront either escapes via a storm drain on the street that goes down into the waterfront directly, or into the Don River. The Don River has an awful lot of litter.
Several storm drain traps have also been deployed in an effort to keep some of Toronto's trash from ending up in the water. The trash collection effort will launch in May. With the help of human-powered skimming, hopes to reduce the amount of refuse found floating along the waterfront.
We have increased the amount of cleanup that we do every year because we've increased capacity with humans and or more traps, but we still are finding lots of debris every day.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
We're continuing our tour of places to visit for March break.
There is certainly no shortage of things to do in and around this city. And today, our Jessica Smith is checking out the programming at the Royal Ontario Museum. Jess, the kids are out of school today, but I bet they are still learning a ton if they are at the ROM.
Listen, learning can still be fun, especially on March break, and there's so much to do here at the Royal Ontario Museum. We're in one of the rooms where you can actually get hands-on and make some stuff. I'm joined by Jennifer Wild with the museum. Talk to me about this week, because you guys are busy. There was a lineup outside the door on my way in.
Yes, and we're thrilled to see all those people here this week. The ROM is always a fun place for kids and for families, but this week in particular, we really roll out the red carpet and we ramp up our programming and our activities. So no matter where you walk around in the ROM, you'll find something to do.
Speaking of something to do, we have some kids here kind of doing the proper placement of a monarch butterfly. Really, really cool. Why was it important to also have that hands-on element? Because yes, you can walk through and see some really, really cool things, but this is really unique.
Yes, exactly. So this allows kids to do something when they're in the museum. Kids can look, yes, absolutely, but being able to take an activity, do an activity, helps them, first of all, have some fun, but also it makes the learning a little stickier when they've actually done something, when they've colored in a monarch butterfly. They're also learning about the migration path, and then adding something to a community sculpture where they put all their butterflies together. So it's about learning, it's about fun, something together as a community.
This is obviously a special and very busy week, and you guys have a little kind of bit of a deal on for people We're all very conscious of making sure that we're able to afford things, but also get out and enjoy what our city has to offer.
Yes, absolutely. So today through Thursday, we're offering a 20% discount on admission to help out families and encourage people to come on over to the ROM.
You had me at discount. Now, you guys have a ton of new things always coming through the museum. What can people expect as we get through the rest of this weekend and towards, the rest of the spring?
Yeah, sure. So we have our wonderful exhibition lineup, including of the year. That's an annual photography contest that is very popular and an annual tradition for a lot of people from the area to come and see. It's beautiful. We also have Nature in Brilliant Color, which is very popular with families because it looks at color as a language within the natural. So animals that are all, things that are all green, things that are yellow, things that are red, and you get to explore that and think about how do animals use that color as a communication tool.
Well, Jennifer, thank you so much. We're going to send things back inside to Lindsay. She can talk about the outside. It's here, temperature-controlled room, but back inside to you.
Hey, Jess. Yes, we are live here at the Courtright Centre. We're learning all about maple syrup production. And if you look over here, you might be able to see some plastic tubing. Now, this is a more modern way of tapping the trees. That sap flows through those tubes and makes its way to the sap bucket. Now, you may be wondering about the ideal conditions for making maple syrup. Ideally, we would have overnight lows around -5 degrees and daytime temperatures around +5. Of course, it has been warmer than that today, but we are going to slip back below freezing tonight. We are just outside of the Sugar Shack here. We're going to go inside and check out how that maple syrup gets made, coming up here on CTV News at noon.
Well, another day of sunshine, and it just makes things even more sweet.
Very good, yes. It's good for the soul to be out in the sunshine and good for the tummy to try that maple syrup, I bet, Liz.
Oh, it sure is. And you know what? I'm a little bit biased because I'm here, but I honestly can't think of a better way to enjoy March break than to be outside in the sunshine. The conditions are absolutely perfect. And of course, enjoying a lovely sweet treat. I have Heather Stafford here from the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority. You are the supervisor of outreach, community outreach?
Yeah, community outreach and education.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for having us today. Happy March break to you. Tell us a little bit about what's going on here this week. It's your maple syrup festival.
Yeah, excellent. So we have our Maple Syrup Festival here at the Courtright Centre as well as at Bruce's Mill. And you can come and learn about how maple syrup was made through the ages. You can also enjoy pancakes with maple syrup, of course. There's horse-drawn wagon rides. There's kids' activities. There's a shop. You can purchase maple syrup. And then we have entertainment from like jugglers and musicians. So lots of fun things to come and see.
And I mean, maple syrup is a big part of our Canadian identity, so it's fun for families and kids to get to learn how it starts and really connect with nature.
Yeah, of course, my favorite part is that you get to come outside in like the perfect time of year. It's not too hot, not too cold, it's lovely. And then we're learning about a really Canadian tradition. So we start by learning about how Indigenous people in this area were making maple syrup long before any Europeans came in, and how they really were expert syrup and sugar makers a long time ago.
Well, and speaking of which, you have a little bit of a sample here. I would love to try some of this maple syrup. Can you describe what this maple syrup is that I'm tasting?
Yeah, so this is dark maple syrup, which should have like a nice, robust maple-y flavor. It's what a lot of people like to use for cooking. I personally love it on my pancakes, and it's such a nice maple syrup.
I actually love it on its own. It is that good. Thank you so much, Heather. And of course, maple syrup producing is very weather dependent, or, to get the sap flowing, we need certain types of weather conditions. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so it really only happens at this time of year in the spring. So we need temperatures that are below freezing at night and then above freezing during the day. And so I like to say it's when the puddles are frozen at night and they thaw during the day. That's the perfect time. And that's when the sap is going to be running up from the roots. It's been stored there all winter and running up to the branches and causing the buds to burst. And once we have leaves on the trees, then the sap no longer tastes any good because there's minerals going up and down through it, and it sort of tastes a little bit off. So now is the perfect time.
Well, I can tell you this tastes awesome. Nothing tasting off about this finished product. And we are going to check out a little bit more about how this gets made, but we have to talk about the weather too. We'll begin by letting you know that weather is brought to you by the Pressler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. Now, temperature-wise out here right now, it is just gorgeous. 12 degrees in Toronto, 15 in Windsor. But look at northern parts of Ontario. It is still very much winter. Temperatures there in the minus double digits, minus 13 degrees in Timmins, minus 16 this hour in Moosonee. Today's high, yeah, we've likely already reached that. It's possible we could even climb a little bit warmer than 12 degrees at this rate, although a cold front is on the way, so things are going to start to change, especially as we make our way through the second half of the afternoon and then the early part of the evening. But enjoy the sunshine right now. Here's a look at what you can expect this evening. Maybe you're going to be heading out and about. You can expect that the winds are going to strengthen late this afternoon. They'll be calmer tomorrow, but they are going to be coming from a bit more of an easterly direction, so that will change things a little bit as well. Here's a look at what you can expect into tonight. Maybe you're heading out for an evening stroll. Maybe you want to go for a skate. Temperature around 6 degrees by 6 p.m. Still above freezing through this evening, but it's overnight tonight that temperature is expected to drop below the freezing mark, and we'll likely feel that into tomorrow. Minus 4 degrees for the low. That's again normal for this time of year. Clear skies, and again, winds easing, but definitely coming out of the northwest and feeling a little bit chilly. As for the active weather, not much of it in store for the next little bit here. We do have that cold front that's sinking south. With it, some areas could get a few flurries, maybe a passing shower, but anticipating, if anything, we will get some cloud here in the GTA. Otherwise, it should be dry. Here's your forecast radar. We'll set it in motion so you can see not much happening really over the next couple of days here. Tomorrow, our cool day of the week, is also a bit cloudy, but then Thursday we're back into some sun. Friday we're back into some warmer temperatures too. Let's take a look at that 7-day forecast. So 8 degrees on Thursday, 13 again, back into the double digits for Friday. The weekend could bring us some of the warmest weather of the week, but it does also come with some active weather. It is going to be rainy, especially Saturday night and into the day on Sunday. So that's the active part of the 7-day forecast. Coming up, I'm going to take you inside the Sugar Shack. We'll do a little demonstration of how that maple syrup is made. But for now, Nathan and Natalie, I'll send it back inside to you.
All right, looking forward to it. Thank you, Lindsay. Well, still to come is Fraud Prevention Month, and an old scam is making the rounds again. It's the pet adoption scam. Victims see pets online they want to adopt, but after they send money, the dog or cat never arrives. One man's word of warning after the break. All around the world, people are reflecting on a somber anniversary.
It was 5 years ago today that the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. Here in Toronto, John Tory was at the helm of the city as mayor when this crisis began to unfold, and he joins us live now with a look back at that incredibly difficult time. John, thank you for joining us. Take us back to this time 5 years ago. Set the scene on what was going on at Toronto City Hall as fears and uncertainty were mounting.
Well, it was very interesting because 5 years ago tomorrow, there were only 59 cases of COVID in the entire province of Ontario. And Toronto had its first case in January, and there were sporadic cases happening subsequent to that. But we were receiving, very educated, informed as best one could be, warnings from our medical officer of health, Dr. Davila, who did such an excellent job. Together with Chief Pegg and Councillor Cressy, we, formed the core of a great leadership team, that if we did nothing, that it was entirely possible that 15,000 people could die in the city of Toronto. And that certainly gets your attention when you, as I believe my job when I was mayor was to protect life and to save life above and beyond anything else. And so we began to sort of look at this, and with the worldwide declaration of a pandemic only told us something was coming, and Dr. Davila confirmed that something was coming. And indeed, by June, just a few months later, 1,000 people had already died in the province of Ontario. So that's how fast this came upon us. But we knew so little. You remember we taped off playgrounds because we thought that if you touched a piece of playground equipment or a faucet in a bathroom, you might get COVID. And of course, we learned a lot more later, the world did, about this unknown. So we were spending a lot of time trying to be calm, deliberative, trying to take measures that we thought were the right ones at the time. And that's what we did throughout the entirety of the thing, which of course was expected to last a few weeks and lasted a couple of years.
At what point did it become very real or apparent to you personally that the city was going to be faced with an unprecedented crisis? Was it when COVID cases started to appear in Canada, or that case in Toronto that you mentioned, or did you know before that point that it would be inevitable?
Well, it was both. I think as the reality set in that there were many more cases happening in Europe and other places in the world, Iran, where people would then travel to Toronto and it would spread here to others. And then the number of cases here started to mushroom. And so that's why we declared an emergency situation here in March, shortly after the 5-year anniversary that we're marking today, and started to take steps. And, people second guess those now. But in the end, 4,000 people did die in the city of Toronto alone. That's the really bad and tragic news for a lot of families. Many other people were affected by it in many different ways. But the other reality is that Toronto, as a result of the measures that were taken in concert with the other governments, established one of the best records in the world of minimizing death and maximizing vaccination, which turned out in the end to be the key was vaccination, with all the other measures with masks and people staying home and all the rest. The best weapon we had in the end turned out to be vaccination.
And in addition to the obvious health and safety issues at play, needless to say, there were serious economic impacts on the city as well. How concerned were you about the effects of lockdowns and ultimately the complete standstill that the city was faced with?
Oh, the whole thing was a nightmare, to be honest. I mean, you knew not only were people's health and well-being at stake in terms of people losing their lives and a lot of seniors in long-term care and so on, but you knew that any measure that was imposed, placed a terrible hardship on business, which again related to the well-being and livelihood of people who lived in the city of Toronto. And so these were very difficult and very lonely decisions, quite frankly, but you had to make them on the best basis that you could, remain calm and remain deliberative about it, and use the best information you had, which of course changed from day to day. And so, all of us sitting there, whether it was the Premier or any of us that worked well together, were very mindful of the fact that any measure you undertook to try and stop the spread of COVID and to try and stop people from dying were measures that had other impacts. And so, and I just want to say, by the way, while we're chatting, I'm so grateful to all the people, because we never really had a chance to thank them because nobody talks about this anymore, to thank the healthcare workers, the transit workers who kept the trains running, all the civic employees who, did all the things they had to do, and really just people who worked in grocery stores and had to go to work every day. But the economic cost was terrible, and the mental health cost for people like kids not at school with their friends and socializing as kids love to do. These were all consequences that you couldn't foresee entirely, but you knew it was problematic, but you did what you thought was right. That's all you could do.
Well, you talk about the economic costs there. How has the city recovered economically? At this point, in your view, obviously there were some incredible pressures on the municipal budget as a result of the pandemic, and even the work from home phenomenon that resulted from COVID-19 has had major implications on the city's economy as well.
Yeah, I would say even years later, the city hasn't fully recovered, and that's that's a function of a number of things. But I think that I'm one of those who believes that work from home is great and it provides flexibility, but you need to be sort of at the office to maximize the kind of learning that goes on and the career development that happens and so on. And that certainly hasn't recovered. That in turn means transit ridership hasn't completely recovered. That has a big financial cost on the city. But look, I think the things that are going on today with Mr. Trump and so on are more damaging than COVID was 5 years in the mirror, the rearview mirror, but it certainly extracted a huge price, and it takes you time to come back from that. And I have great faith, though, in the resilience of people in the city. They proved it during the time of the pandemic by getting vaccinated and by hanging in there, helping each other. They were unified in a way that we've not seen before in the city. And frankly, since then, I think the unity of the city has suffered. But I think during that time, people were pretty much all together in working and helping each other and trying to make sure we got through this as best we could.
Well, you mentioned the Trump tariff war. With Toronto and the entire country facing economic threats of a very different kind right now, do the lessons learned from steering the city through the economic crisis created by the pandemic offer any sort of guidance or reassurance in what is shaping up to be another very uncertain economy?
Well, yes, just that you have to take it day by day, and you have to be steady, and you have to be informed, and you have to try to make your decisions based on evidence, and that people shouldn't politicize it. I mean, we are always inclined to politicize and polarize things nowadays, and I think what you have to do is work together. All the governments have to work together, and I have great hopes that will happen during the tariff, things to come. I don't want to call it a war, because I hope it never gets to that. It's already a bit of certainly a serious skirmish. But, people just have to work together, and they have to avoid the polarization and the name calling and the finger pointing. We all have to be in this together as Torontonians and as Canadians, and that's always been true. but it's never more true than in a crisis, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's an unnecessary trade war started by somebody outside of this country.
Okay, former Toronto Mayor John Tory, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We've got more now on our top story, the latest developments in the U.S. tariff war. Now, Donald Trump is reacting further to Ontario's decision to impose a 25% surcharge on electricity going into 3 American states. The U.S. president posted this on Truth Social, saying, "Why would our country allow another country to supply us with electricity, even for a small area? Who made these decisions and why?" And can you imagine Canada stooping so low as to use electricity that so affects the life of innocent people as a bargaining chip and threat? They will pay a financial price for this so big that it will be read about in history books for many years to come. Trump also said today he will double tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel to 50% tomorrow. And these new tariffs threats come as Toronto's mayor is continuing her Shop Local, Buy Local campaign.
It is in response to the ongoing trade war. Today, Olivia Chow was visiting a business in Scarborough, and our Beth McDonnell is there. She joins us live with the details. Beth.
Yeah, Natalie, and these new extra 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum coming up in the discussion here today. Mayor Chow saying that Torontonians are feeling anxious. They are feeling the uncertainty. At the same time, she supports the provincial and federal governments, and Canada will never be the 51st state. She was here in Scarborough touring a manufacturing plant to support her push for people to buy Canadian and to buy local. The mayor had the chance to see the pumps at Armstrong Fluid Technology firsthand. It's a Canadian-owned and operated company that's been manufacturing water pumps since the 1940s and now does everything from heating and air conditioning to fire safety and residential water supply. This is a company watching what's happening with the tariffs very closely. The mayor says effective immediately, she has instructed the city manager to buy Canadian whenever possible for contracts under $350,000. And at the next council meeting, she says there will be a motion to bar U.S. companies from future city contracts.
Canada will never be the 51st state, and we will stand together to support local business like Armstrong. And by shopping local, buying Canadian, and by the way, if you need a new HVAC system, here's a Canadian company. Shop local and be proud.
The mayor is meeting with her economic action team again this week to finalize a response to these tariffs and says she will be unveiling that plan on Monday. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell.
Get Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
Pet adoption scams hit an all-time high during the pandemic when many families were looking for dogs or cats for companionship.
Criminals are at it again, posting ads on social media claiming to give cats and dogs away for free, but it's all a scam. CTV's Pat Foran reports.
She kept my wife company. She would watch golf with me on Sundays.
Casey Andre of Scarborough says it was a sad day last fall when he had to say goodbye to his beloved cat Gabby due to a serious illness.
We had to put our cat down back in September, and my wife and I agreed that in January, in the new year, we would start looking for another cat.
Andre says he recently saw an ad on Facebook that said kittens for rehoming and adoption. After he clicked on the link and filled out some information, he was sent a photo of a kitten. He agreed to adopt it and was sent a transfer of pet ownership. The cat would be free, but there was a $155 registration fee. After he paid that, he was told there was a $208 charge for vaccines. After that was paid, they wanted another $301 for delivery. Andre says at that point he refused to pay and knew it was a scam.
I feel bad that I was taken.
I'm sure it was very, heartbreaking for them to go through that.
The Toronto Humane Society says when adopting an animal, you need to do your research and make sure you're dealing with a reputable source.
Whether that is, a rescue or a Humane Society shelter, or there are rehoming platforms.
To avoid pet scams, beware if pets are offered for free or a low price. Then there are requests for money for insurance, documents, shipping crates, vaccines, and veterinary charges. Also be cautious if they won't meet in person and all correspondence is online. The Ontario SPCA and Humane Society have animals for adoption. The fees are stated up front, and there is a lot of information about the pets.
They're going to be able to tell you their history, their behavior, what their medical status is, have some health records, what they're like in the home, their personality.
Andre says he's decided to adopt a cat using the Humane Society, but he wanted to share his story to warn others.
I got taken for some money, but I want other people not to be scammed on Facebook.
Pat Foran, CTV News.
A lawsuit against social media platforms launched by more than a dozen school boards in Ontario can go ahead. 14 school boards, including the TDSB, are suing Meta, Snapchat, and TikTok for disrupting student learning and the education system. The social media giants put forward a motion to get the lawsuits dismissed, but a judge has decided to allow them to proceed. The school boards are seeking a $4.5 billion in damages. None of the allegations has been proven in court. Hundreds of school districts in the U.S. have filed similar suits. Now, before we go to break, let's check in with Lindsay outside on this sunny Tuesday.
Well, Natalie, we've just moved inside to the Sugar Shack. It is still sunny outside, but we're having some fun checking out the next round of magic here at maple syrup making. Heather, this is the evaporator?
That's right, yeah. So here we've got plastic tubing bringing the sap to us in the evaporator, and we're using a nice wood fire that's contained, no smokiness here, and we're evaporating away all the water. So we've got in the first part here, this looks just like the sap. So we're just starting to boil this stuff, and then so this is our evaporator, this is our finishing pan, and everybody needs to say ooh, ah when I do this one. Okay, ready? Ooh, ah.
Yeah, that looks a little more like maple syrup to me.
Yeah, that's right. So this is our finishing pans. This is where we're finishing off the maple syrup, and we're gonna get that tasty treat in the end.
Okay, well, tasty treat sounds good to me, and we're gonna take one more look at your weather forecast after this break here on CTV News at noon. Thanks, guys. Say hi.
The TTC will soon be the source of some loud noise in the East End. The transit agency is going to use sound cannons to keep seagulls away from the Leslie streetcar facility. Officials say the building's large green roof is an ideal environment for the birds and attracts up to 15,000 of them each year. It says it has tried several methods to keep the gulls away, but so far none have worked. The plan is to start using the sound cannons this week.
In sports, the Maple Leafs were trying to avoid a fourth straight loss against Utah Hockey Club last night. It was a game that would be decided in a shootout.
So it's on the stick of Mitch Marner. 10 of 33. One here for a win, and scores!
Mitch Marner scored the winning goal to give Toronto a 4-3 win. The Leafs salvaged the win after blowing a 3-0 lead. The victory also snaps a 3-game losing streak for the Leafs. They'll be back in action Thursday when they host the Florida Panthers.
That's the first time that's happened in franchise history. AJ! I can get to the iron. I can throw it down.
And the Raptors were also in action looking for revenge in a rematch against the Washington Wizards. Brampton native AJ Lawson had a career night for the Raptors, becoming just the third Canadian in NBA history with a 30-plus point double-double off the bench. Toronto came off a loss Saturday against Washington. However, they would take this one 119-104. The team has the day off before returning to action tomorrow against the 76ers.
All right, back to Lindsay outside with that sweet assignment. Lindsay.
Nathan, Natalie, we've been going on quite a journey here to see how maple syrup is made. And Heather, now we have the finished product here.
Now we have the finished product, a lovely bottle of maple syrup. And this is my favorite one. This is the dark maple syrup with a really nice flavor. I love it on my pancakes. It's great.
I think that's the one I tried, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. I love that one too. That's a good one. And so it is amazing how this all begins with nature, our beautiful trees. Look at this amazing day that we're having out here. And then the different processes. This is something that families can come check out out for themselves this week and beyond. Tell us about the Maple Syrup Festival.
Yes, you can check out information on our website, maplesyrupfest.com, and the festival is on during March break and then weekends until April 6th. So we're still going for a while. And of course, you can come out for lots of different activities, not only maple syrup making, but wagon rides, pancakes, activities, games, lots of fun stuff to see and do.
And you've also got a little bit of evening programming happening.
That's right, yeah. Starting Saturday, we are doing our Maple Syrup by Lamplight event. So you can come in the evenings on Fridays and Saturday evenings to enjoy all the same things, but at night.
Well, that sounds fantastic, but I must say I'm really enjoying the daytime and these conditions. Let's take one more look at your weather forecast. And I'm happy to say for all the maple syrup producers that we are expecting a cooler night tonight, slipping back below freezing, which will be nice. Into tomorrow, it is another, well, you know what? It's a slightly cooler day tomorrow. We are expecting some cloud cover, so there is that. But this is a bit of a one-off when it comes to your March break. The rest of the March break is looking pretty bright, very mild. And then the weekend, we have to plan for some active weather, rain, maybe heavy at times, especially into Saturday night. But we're not complaining about that today. It's lovely out here, nice breeze, beautiful sunshine. And Natalie and Nathan, I don't know if I can bring any of this maple syrup home for you. I'm going to try my best, but I guess I'll just enjoy a little bit more on your behalf. Is that okay? Cheers.
You know, sharing is caring.
There you go. You know where to find us, Liz.
Good jig. All right, we'll see you soon. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here, thank you for watching. I'm Natalie Johnson.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great afternoon.